Okay, we're live. Awesome. So this morning we're here just hanging out and kind of hashing out some thoughts in public. This is not at all a formal presentation or webinar in any shape or form. And I'm here with Alan and Jonathan and Kim, just talking through some of the thoughts we have about what we might do to continue connected courses after this week. And we also wanted to invite people to join using the Twitter hashtag #CCourses, hashtag not over. But we also wanted to do something just totally crazy, which is to invite anybody who wants to hop into this hangout and talk with us to join whenever you want in this hour. And I think that Jameson, otherwise known as at DML Research Hub, has just tweeted out the link to this hangout for anybody who wants to join. Feel free to join now in a few minutes, for a few minutes, for the full hour, and also on the Twitter. So I don't know, who wants to jump in first? Like, what are you guys thinking for life after this week on connected courses?
Crash the hangout right now. Just kidding. I mean, one thing is this kind of discussion of not being over is, I mean, the participants actually mostly decide that. So, it's a great example when Alec Kurz had his ETMOOC participants on, and, that was their message of how they continued with it. So on one hand, there are things that we are willing to try and we'll probably be talking about in this hour, but so much as it has happened so far in connected courses has been what the people have brought, what they did on their own. So the Daily Connect, was nothing that was planned. It just kind of happened and morphed and was a great thing. So I'm glad that we're doing this, and so it ain't over.
I think the Daily Connect was also, Kevin Hodgson. If we could just keep Kevin in the group, I think we'll be fine. Kevin always keeps things going. I think it's interesting, Alan, because it's kind of like Santa. Like, if we believe in connected courses continuing, they will continue.
Which it is. If you look in this body of literature, there's an assumption that all digital tools are eventually either usable on the internet or internet.
Hey Joyce, you're gonna have to mute your microphone, I think.
Okay.
So
She's
didn't need to make definitions, but then got.
There you go.
or you shall be muted. Politely muted, I would say, by the polite DML badge person.
The bouncer.
Yeah. Cool. It's going to be noisy in this room.
Hi, Joyce.
Hey, this is cool.
We're getting a tour of your workspace. That's also cool.
Yeah, but I can't hear anything at all, so we'll move out. Yeah.
I know where you are, Joyce.
Yes.
I know that office space.
You've been there. Yes, you have. Yes.
So what do you think we should do?
I'm not sure. I've been myself trying to put together, well, not by myself, but we are putting together an online learning experience for the faculty here that is about how to build a connected course. So this practical piece has been really helpful to me to figure out, what you all think is important for faculty to learn in a short amount of time, because what we've often found is the 12 weeks or even 9 weeks is such a long time for people to stay engaged, especially this time of year. So that's the problem we're trying to solve.
Joyce, can you tell us a little bit more about where you are and your community?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm at Virginia Commonwealth University. I work at the Alt Lab, and so with John Becker and a few of the other people with Gardner Campbell, and trying to bring the idea of connected learning to this campus, which is an interesting journey, if you will. Yeah. So, and we've invited, I think we have up to 37, I think, something like that, people that will be joining us in January for a short connected course, and then they'll go online and build a course through the semester.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. So is there, in terms of this community, of which we are only a few representatives, what would be helpful for you for the kind of support or connections or anything?
Well, I think what's been really helpful is just the conversations that have been happening throughout the semester, sort of, going past the theoretical definitions of what connected learning is and what you all have found to be helpful and valuable to yourself in your own practice. So I think for me, it's been the conversation. What you've found to be valuable, what you've had to let go of. That one's sometimes the hardest thing, is that you have established theory of, okay, this is how you design a course, right? Which is what my work has always been. And then to kind of undo that, to open it up, I think is for a lot of faculty very difficult to be to latch onto the idea of being open to the entire world and having your entire class right there is scary sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, like, you really want to plan it, and then plan just to throw everything out the window,
Right.
and then have something that you can go with, and so
Right. Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
for the unplanned.
Right. And we're also putting together, what we're hoping to do is have at the end of the year a festival, if you will, of people that have been trying to put this together for the last year and more than that. To have kind of a come together and see what people have made and how they can go forward. So interesting ideas all around. But I do like your idea. You have to have a plan, but there has to be open spaces in the plan to let the people who come be part of it.
Joyce, I love that idea that you're going to host some sort of a festival. Will you guys make any of the work that you've created available to online so that others of us could?
Yeah, right.
Cool.
Right now it's not, that there's that level of when it's quite ready for prime time thing, and yeah, we're hoping to make that possible next week and finally get the website finished, and we'll definitely have that open and get our faculty then in January to be open to a conversation with all of you. So we're hoping that'll work out. Yeah.
That's neat. It's making me realize, Mimi, too, that that some of us are creating not just courses, but resources for building courses that are kind of, spreading out from connected courses. Because that's what my grad students and I are doing right now, too, and we're going to go live with that site next week. So Alan put together that great Google Doc with all the courses. Maybe I should make a new one that's like resources for, I realize it's kind of on our connected courses, but that might be helpful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we have a GDoc or a wiki or whatever. Well, GDocs are easier for people to edit than wikis, even though I embrace the idea of the wiki. Yeah, I think that would be cool, just to have an ongoing resource curation, something that
Right.
everybody could update. And I also really like this festival or showcase idea. I wonder if that's just something we could do every once in a while, is like some virtual conference-y kind of thing, which is Ignite, because it's hard to curate things in ways that are, not everybody wants to write, blog every week or, have their full course built out, but you have ideas that you want to share with people. Like, I feel like that's where I am with my course, too. I'm totally new to this, and we've been hashing out ideas for our DML course, but it's not, baked enough to do our official announcement. But I would love to just have 5 minutes to say, hey, folks, here are initial thoughts. This is what we're doing. So maybe that's something that we could actually sort of organize and schedule,
well, the connected courses space is going to stay open, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So that might just be a place that that you have a space for that conversation. Or,
Yeah.
announce when those things happen in Twitter, but actually have also a space in courses.
It should be great just to check in with people who are trying these things out, in the middle of it, and just find out, what's working, what's not working, and
Exactly.
how much sleep they're losing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really intense. I mean, and if you look at it from like an amount of time that you spend on teaching this, and I'm trying to figure out how Kim does 5 of these. I
don't get that.
I got worn out teaching one class, and because I'm really inefficient with the way I use the time, but it is demanding, but the demands are worth it when you get the reward of what you see happens. But sometimes you're in the middle of it and you're saying, what the bleep am I doing?
And what's
what's
the same and what's not the same? That was one of the things one of our faculty came in and said, what do I have to learn, the specifics to do this? What are the basics that I have to change in my head but in my practice? And that's, it seems like such a straightforward question, but the list is, just it depends on where you are at the time when you come in to begin. But it is hard to change.
Alan, I wasn't thinking I was being all that smart when Tuesday morning after, I don't know how many times that 341 course has been tweeted out, the one that we were doing with the 8th graders, and I thought I had my spam stuff locked down pretty well, and I had over 5,000 spam comments, and had caught about half. Whoa. And I spent an hour and a half Tuesday morning deleting spam off of my 8th graders' posts. I was like, oh. Whoa. So the only thing I could say was like, well, this isn't efficient, and if I was on Blackboard, I wouldn't be worried about spam. And Jeff and my husband, and this, I'm sorry, but this is totally facetious, but my husband was like, yeah, but Blackboard would be down.
You would have a problem.
You wouldn't be in there anyway. So as we, on Monday's webinar, we were talking about you can't ignore that sometimes there's extra labor, right, that we're having to do that we're willing to do because I feel like it's worth it, but I don't want to sugarcoat that sometimes I'm doing things like, making sure I understand how spam works on my, WordPress site. Hey, Jonathan, can you talk a little bit? Is Jonathan still there? He's like frozen.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, good.
Just holding still.
Jonathan, can you talk about what you did with Phonar yesterday?
Yeah. So it kind of grew out of the connected courses. 2 of us with no interest, no prior sort of background experience in privacy, security, trust, found that we had a lot in common. It's a concert cellist called Laura. Oh my God! Laura Ritchie. I can't believe it. I nearly forgot her name. She just left my house. So I told Laura that my Phonar class, it's a photography and narrative class, and we've just done 10 weeks. Yesterday was the final session. I said that the group, this particular group, they were really struggling with sharing, really struggling with working together, and they've kind of got, they know this. We've spoken about it. They've developed this reputation over the last 3 years, as cohorts will do. They work very hard, but they're very competitive. And they have to now go away and do a final exhibition, and they have to do that together. They have to work as a team, otherwise it's not going to work. And so I mentioned this to Laura, and she said, well, why don't I come and work with them? Why don't I come and do something? And it sounded great. It's the final session. What could go wrong? And so she turned up. She drove the length of the country. She arrived the night before the class with a van full of cellos. And 7 o'clock in the morning, we unloaded all of these cellos into the classroom, and I had to hold the students out, so they didn't know what was going on, obviously. And they kind of walk in, and she says, "I've got someone who want to speak to you first. Hello, nice to meet you all." They walk in, the room's completely full of these instruments. They have to go and find and sit by one. None of them have touched an instrument in their life to this point. And she Skypes a guy in from Hawaii who's just finished a gig. And this, I've put this on the Phonar blog, but this guy's done a great song where he kind of layers the song. He plays one instrument and he layers the song. He layers it until he has almost seemingly a full band orchestra playing. So we're going to do this. We're going to do Dwayne's piece, and the room was just full of open-mouthed students. But we did. She did. She taught it in an hour, and at the end of it, there were, well, I won't. It was great. They were playing together. They were playing music together. It was wonderful. So that was great. Didn't expect that in a photography class. And that was born out of sort of relationships built and connected courses. This iteration. The other thing I was going to say was I've been running a local iteration of connected courses at Coventry, and I wondered if other people had this experience as well. Pretty much most of the people, if not all of the people that attended, found that to dive headlong into the connected courses was too heavy a lift. It was too daunting, and they almost needed me to build an access course for them to get into the access course, which is what we did. We spent each week, I spent time with individuals, rather than connecting courses, just connecting classes, and that's what we worked on. We worked on connecting individuals' classes, which was not to say it wasn't a success, because it absolutely was, but I was just wondering if other people at other institutions have had this, where to connect an entire course was perhaps a bit heavier lift, but just to pick a favorite class that they love and really confident about, connecting that one was a much easier way in. I wondered how other people had found that.
You know, that was exactly my experience working with faculty here at Chico State. Two things. One was right off the bat, I had some colleagues from across disciplines who said just the lexicon that just the way we talk was so foreign that they didn't know where to start, and so we just had coffee, a few times. So it wasn't even a course. It was just kind of like someone who was like, you almost need someone to notice the things. They're like, no, this is helpful. Like, this thing's helpful. And then the graduate course was the other place that made it. I'm so glad we did it that way, because we really ran it as a twofold. One was their research interests around these ideas of open or gaming or whatever their research interests were around digital something. And then the other half of the time we'd spend doing connected courses together. So we didn't necessarily ever read ahead of time. We read things together, we watched webinars together, and we had each other to kind of which of these things matter. And I think you're right, Jonathan. There's building these little individual communities that help us with the larger community. Even a buddy, like Danielle was saying on Monday, I found incredibly helpful.
And Simon, what's his name, Thompson, who's been involved, he's trying to do a model like this where he wants to have a local group who actually get together and meet. I mean, and that's what went on at VCU. There's a group at Virginia Tech and probably elsewhere, and there's a lot of value in these spaces of people, and it's the core of what happens in Phonar. I mean, Jonathan has a core group of students who are in the room with this periphery of the open community, but there's incredible value by us actually sitting in the same space and debriefing on it. Still, people, are going to talk about, they don't have that or they feel isolated, and so kind of those. I think we used to call it like a little cell model. Gardner Campbell was trying to do a couple of years ago with his network seminar. So the idea of actual people coming together in person to talk, to play video games, to play cellos is really valuable.
Yeah, and I hope we create that when we have this small group of faculty come together in a room that are cross-discipline, even though some of them are in the same program. We're hoping to build a cadre of faculty, working on this together and pulling it along. Hopefully that will, even if they find one or two people they connect with, that's sometimes enough rather than the whole group of people.
And some people, Kim jumped in and did hers, in the beginning of Connected Courses. There were a couple people who, you find out peripherally when they tweeted. There was the guy who was the math teacher at the K-12, I can't remember. He pretty much assembled his hub and had his session going. Other people are still trying to sort out conceptually what they're going to do, and the whole technological thing, which is a barrier for a lot of people, which we want to try to help, is another issue. So people are going to move through this at these different paces.
Yes.
So, while I've got all these really nice experty type people, I know you guys don't think of yourselves that way, but you are in the space. I'm going to try something, I think, pretty ambitious next spring, and I'm nervous about it. So I have a jumbo first-year writing class. It has 100 freshmen. These will all be EOP, Educational Opportunity Program. And within that, I have 10 writing mentors who are in the course, and I'm co-teaching the course, thank goodness, with Tom Fox, who's amazing. And we've decided, well, Tom doesn't know this yet, but we've decided that I'm going to have all the freshmen do their own, if not their own domain, at least their own WordPress blog. And I'm going to RSS feed those blogs into hubs because they're in workshops with groups of 10 with these mentors. And then I'm going to feed those 10 hubs into the main course.
Right.
And most of it's because the grad students and I found it so valuable, obviously, to go through that process together. In the past, I always just had the freshmen on my blog, just on my blog, and they're not even feeding it, they're just blogging with me on my same site. And so I want them to have control over their content a little more. And I'm nervous as heck because that means I've got 110 people that I have to get up to speed. Is it doable? Or, if it doesn't work, whatever, we'll do something else. I'll bring pen and paper.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're going to have like 10 smaller hubs, and from them they'll feed one big hub. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Definitely do. I mean, you can syndicate off of a syndication site because that has its own, Uber feed, and technically it'll work. The setup is the hard thing. So how do you onboard them quick? So as much as I dearly love Jim Groom and everything the domain of one's own does, it's not necessarily critical because you can always do it after. So when someone, my last DS-106, I had my students, because it was only 8 weeks, I had them do WordPress.com, and it's still a place they manage. And once people have a little bit of that experience, I mean, you're going to get the experience of writing and learning in the open. Once they have that, then you can say, okay, if you've bought into some of this reflecting, if you don't treat it as just something where you're dumping your assignments because you're supposed to, if they have the interest, you can ratchet them up to a domain pretty easily. The stuff is portable, so you can,
That's a great idea.
You can start in one place, and that's, why another class? Because otherwise you have to teach a platform. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want to teach platforms. It's dull, and it's soul killing to have to teach, where to click and those sort of things.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, I think, Alan, you're right. I think WordPress.com is you can make it work. And the advantage that we have, if we're thinking about literacy more broadly in first year comp, is they are in a smaller 2-hour workshop every week with these mentors. I bet they could be up and running within an hour, actually, with a WordPress to get started. And since we already do e-portfolios, I usually have them build that way too late. So I'm hoping that some of that gets worked out as we go, and it doesn't even have to look good until 15 weeks later. Like, I think it'll be slow. So I'm going to give it a shot. And if it doesn't work.
Kim, Kim, one of the things you could do, my colleague Matt Johnston, he devised a template which had all the resources that they needed for the subject, all the links, everything was there, ready to go. All the student did was fill their name in, and they were away, boom, and they could start posting. And then, as they wanted to, they would then, change this template to sort of personalize images. But you could get 100 students up and running like that if they all had the template.
And especially if they're going to be, gathering in that first meeting with their mentors, if they do it together, it's completely different when you're dealing with a completely online class where you're trying to help students you can't even see or communicate with. So that's a real advantage.
Yeah.
I think your mic's off, Kim.
Oh. Kim, are you frozen? Well, I also am thinking as we're talking that this sort of support group function, not only the tech support, but just the, oh my God, is this crashing and burning kind of a support function. I mean, that was definitely a big part of my early experience in Connected Courses because it's the first time I've co-facilitated an open course, and just being able to say, oh my God, is it okay? And I think the forum can be that. I mean, Alan, you're thinking the tech stuff can go on the forum because there's a persistence there that's helpful for people who come up, with similar questions. But I think, yeah, to the degree that whether it's the Twitter hashtag or anything else, knowing that this is a group that you can, Kim can say my hub is crashing, or I've got 100 spam or nobody showed up to this. I mean, that would be, for me, helpful, because at whatever level we're at, we're doing something scary new, all of us. I'm not having 100 freshman bloggers, but I am doing something that for me is new, and there's going to be bumps along the road. So I would love to have an ongoing support group for whatever unpredictable thing happens.
I'm not so sure, there was some of this discussion that, do we do it in Twitter or Google Plus or in the forum? And Howard loves the forums, and I teased him, and I actually don't mind the forums, and it's going to bleed all over the places. But, what happens is, there will be people who will, it's not ideal, it's not an ideal network, but they'll say, hey, we're having this discussion in Google Plus. Laura Gibbs does that a lot. So, I'm not too concerned about where it happens. It's just as long as we can sort of collectively try to keep our eyes out for each other. Frankly, I'd like to see people, who are doing this to be writing about their experience doing it. So here's another task for you, Kim, is to be blogging, your process.
I managed to do that twice this semester, but yes. That needs to happen. Alan, I like the honoring of, because I know you and I agree on this, that I don't want to get too, it's not about a platform. This is about bigger ideas, and platforms go away. So you're going to get, crazy good at Twitter, and someday Twitter won't be there. And I also like how, if we're seated in all these different platforms, when one goes away, it's still okay. And also it honors the way people work. I mean, whatever works for you. And some people it works best to shout out on Twitter, hey, I need some help. And for others, the forum works because you can have more threaded discussions. So I like that we're kind of, we're going to figure that part out. And then you're right, Alan, it's just a few, people kind of have to keep the eye on where's the activity happening, or cross, say, hey, this is happening on this other, platform. Yeah. But I like the honoring of lots of ways that work for you, what works in your life.
It's just like when people are, I get asked technical questions, and it's nearly impossible to not only answer, to explain the situation. So, and it's kind of nice to have a place where people can go back and see things. So in a social media space, stuff kind of scrolls away and goes down the big funnel into, Google and Twitter's giant repository where they mine us and plug us into their matrix. So some people occasionally are dedicated enough to try to organize some stuff in terms of the helpful tutorials, and it's a full-time job just to keep track of resources and things like that. I just trying to help some people in the forums already. It really helps if you can tell me what you were trying to do, what you did, and a link so I can look at something besides like, the syndication's broken, and it's hard to diagnose some of this stuff remotely, and it's complex. Jamie had a really good question about use of that Oberlin, theme blog, and some of the things she's asked me was doable, but I mean some of it will take some moderate amount of noodling under the hood of the machine to do some of that. So sometimes you can't get to do everything you want to, unfortunately.
Alan, is that Oberlin theme what's running Connected Courses? Is that how you get those little a lot more thumbnails, or is that something else?
That was custom coded by the UCI team. So
okay.
It's not.
God, I want that.
Well,
I want it.
We may have some connections there.
Yeah. There is. I'll remember to tweet this. There's a plugin I used on a client site that it's sort of a social media wall thing, so you can plug in a hashtag from Twitter, in different accounts, and kind of does the wall thing. And I mean, there are ways you can do it within WordPress. You just have to get in the part of where you try to organize your categories of themes, and you know, you need a theme that puts things on the front page as little blocks instead of just post scrolling down the page. But then you get involved with, well, you got to have a theme that, you know, makes little icons out of everything, and then, oh, not everybody has an icon for everything, so I got generic icons, and so you find, okay, you can do it this way, and then, okay, you add that feature, oh, you have to do this, and then you need a plugin that turns all the images into icons, and then Twitter doesn't have an icon. And so, you know, I don't want to scare people away that it is possible, you know, but it's also a point you have to say, how essential is it? And is there some other, you know, way I can do this and get the same desired effect of having, you know, this flow and this organization of stuff? So sometimes there are options where you just, I can't have the red Camaro, you know, maybe the Yaris will do.
What? Alan, that's not the right answer.
Well, and it isn't actually aesthetic or necessarily or trivial. If I'm going to have 100 freshmen blogging, I want more of them to be seen on the front page of our main site. So I don't want just like the top 20, you know, because it's going to be moving so fast. So it's not, you know, aesthetically I think it looks cool, but it's also about, I want them to be seen and heard, and as many of them as possible. And I love that about I often, you know, every couple days I'm just in the Connected Courses front page just clicking on those, and there's so many to choose from. So yeah, it's not, none of these things are ever trivial or entirely easy, but to love.
Yeah, I mean, when we did the site for Gardner's Thought Vectors course, I mean, the theme that Tom Woodward and I chose deliberately was because it had like 4 different spots on the homepage where you could feature content by tags people are using or categories, and so it has a lot of flexibility than just the most recent stuff. And so, and it's hard to look for that. You know, when you start looking at WordPress themes, you know, in fact, I got a meeting right after this where I'm helping people. We're having a theme shopping meeting, and it's a little mind-boggling to try to find something that A, you know, you can figure out how the heck to use it, and B, you can actually do some of these bits.
Jonathan, do you want to jump in? You're on the chat, but nobody else can see the chat. So,
no,
what are you doing next?
What am I doing next? What am I doing next? I am doing stuff with high schools, continuing to connect classes, but I'm doing, which I guess is much more granular, but I'm doing stuff with 2 high schools that are they're running sort of versions of Phonar, which is they're running Phonar Nation. But I had a question. I wondered how other people who had been interested in Connected Courses, who's reached out to us. I mean, it's not just the participants. I wondered how our institutions had responded. What they thought. I mean, I've had particular responses, but I was really surprised that people reached out to me from high school, from college, which is the bit before university in the UK, and also from industry as well. People really interested from industry and what this connectedness is and what it means and how they can use it within their workforces as well. I just wondered if anyone else has had that.
Well, I'd be really curious just to hear what, you know, for those of you who are working within your institutions, I mean, more than I am for sure, like what is the benefit that people see at the institution level? I guess I'm asking a question back to you, Jonathan, about why people are, you know, interested. And I know Joyce and Kim, you probably have answers to this question too.
Well, my institution, Coventry University, I mean, they're kind of, I think, they're key people that are largely sold. I mean, I've now taken a different job at Coventry University, and I'm part of a sort of research unit. And I've been tasked specifically with connecting as many classes and hopefully courses and then departments as possible. And when people talk about connected, they're largely talking about technological connection. So they're talking about the fact that the students are all connected. So the class is connected by definition because they're all connected. In fact, and most often, in fact, the only person that isn't connected is the teacher. And so they want to move that teacher into that connected class as well. And so there is, what are the benefits? I mean, goodness, we look at the Twitter sphere visualizations, or just the relationships that spring up from from the meta class. When you take the walls down, the class spills out into the internet. There's opportunities for internationalization, for opportunities with industry as industry comes shopping into the classroom. I mean, these all add value and enrich that learning experience from the institution's point of view. And the great thing is obviously that none of it actually costs anymore. So it's very, it just makes sense. I mean, it's bonkers, isn't it? I don't understand why anyone would teach any other way. To me, I certainly wouldn't want my kids to go to a class that wasn't connected. I wouldn't want them to be taught by a teacher who wasn't connected. It's bonkers.
Have we just been joined by another participant? Lane, is it? Okay, I'll see if. Feel free to jump in if you're.
I think.
Jonathan, I totally agree. I really can't imagine. I just, it's interesting how something as simple as, we've known this from people who co-teach for a long time, that when you're co-teaching with someone, it's not necessarily easier, it's different, sometimes it's even harder, but man, does it keep you on your toes differently. I mean, every time I co-teach, I'm like, I'm about to say a thing, and I'm not sure it's accurate. It kind of keeps you, like, you got a colleague in the room, you're like, oh, I can't be flippant about this. I better be thinking through my stuff. So I don't know, it just keeps me a different level of wanting to be on my game, and also a different level of then I feel like a learner. Because I'm connecting not only with my students but other students from other people's classes, and I just feel like one of the people in the room. So I agree. I can't imagine. And as I've said over and over again, I want more opportunities to work with kids. I'm just loving having. It's like your heart grows 3 sizes when 8th graders are blogging with you and so excited about books. I just want to, I'm not giving up. I just want to look for more and more opportunities to connect with K-12 and college classes.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's this story. I'm curious what you guys think about, I know folks like Jim and Joyce and a lot of, you're in the business of bringing new faculty into this way of working that Jonathan and Kim are describing. And to me, that seems like a unique benefit at a time when organizations are often struggling to get their faculty into this whole online learning piece, right? So, I think that the institutions have tried different mechanisms for getting their faculty to develop online courses, like just straight out funding, or offering production support, and having centers for teaching with technology give workshops. And there's a lot of, I know what's happening locally for us, but there's a lot of invitations for faculty these days that are institutionally sponsored. But I feel like what happens in this kind of more community or connectivist sort of mode is that, and this was a new experience for me too, is what Kim and Jonathan are describing is that there's a sense of being in it together and fun and excitement about the learning, which is really unique to actually enacting yourself, experiencing yourself the benefits of connecting with others to learn something that you have a shared purpose with. And I don't see a lot of the institutionally driven invitations. And this is where I would love to hear who's doing it well, really giving faculty that experience that we want our students to have of the benefits of connecting. And that was, at least for me, for connected courses, a unique benefit that was, I never was really motivated to put in my application to develop a Coursera course or these other invitations that I've had from my institutions. But connected courses was a load of fun.
And I think what we've found is that we have individual faculty do this on their own, and we've managed to invite some full programs, a reading program, sociology programs. So, and at present, one of our faculty learning communities is putting together a connected course for graduate students to do research methods. So, but we have to have examples, and that's where we are at present, is that we need to have those early people get excited about it and say, this really works, figure out what their questions are so we can help them better. You know, all the trouble you all are talking about, we're trying to find those tools that help them easiest to jump in and find out how much fun it is to connect with other people with the same questions, right?
There's a bit of an interesting paradox because to me it's like it's going to make sense when people have the experience. So they
Right.
had a connective experience before they try to teach a connective experience. But connected courses is a course about connected courses, and then it's like, wait a minute, I have to try to do this for French literature or geography.
Right.
Where the motivation to participate is not to learn how to participate in the connected course. It's to get interested by geography, and that's what Jonathan has done so beautifully with photography, is finding those hooks into people's interest and doing it in such creative ways. I'm a big fan, Jonathan. You know that.
Jonathan, I wish I could show you the other side of my laptop that I'm working on because it has big Phonar stickers all over it. So, yeah.
Yes.
And I get asked. Yes, I know.
Real estate has been claimed. Thank you.
Stickers.
You can get nervous when I, tattoo, then you draw the line.
That's because you need a lot of stickers, and people spread them around the world. Yeah, I've put Phonar stickers up all over the world.
Yeah, me too. Mimi, what's interesting about that too, and coming off of what Joyce was just saying, is I think one distinction in really good professional development that I've been a part of, this being, I think, one of those experiences, is that often when I'm invited to go to kind of a teaching with tech kind of approach, it's very solutionist, right? It's very like, come learn about clickers. Well, I don't know if I have a problem that clickers are going to solve. In fact, I'm pretty sure I don't. But instead of starting with what are the problems of teaching, so I feel like there's a little bit of this community that's like, I'm trying to do X, that starts from, this is a problem of teaching I'm trying to solve, not I want to learn how to use Twitter, which is a very different approach to PD, and also one of the reasons it makes it hard to join the community, because it isn't as tidy as saying, here's some steps for how to use X. It looks as messy as teaching looks, which is, I don't know, I got this problem, I can't even put a name to it yet. I'm just worried that I can't, my students aren't feeling connected, whatever. It's these much bigger problems. So if we can hold on to that and then get really articulate about describing it, I think there can be momentum on campuses to try it out. I fear that often, at least on my campus, it's approached as kind of this developmental model, like you need to learn to do this in order to do that. And I don't believe that about technology or learning at all. I think you work on whatever problem you're working on.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that, I'm just thinking through what are the openings that faculty have to, what is that shared purpose piece, right? So like Alan was saying, for connected courses, the shared purpose was that we're all designing connected courses. So it's this kind of weirdly recursive one. But then, the co-teaching thing I think is kind of interesting. Like that's where my head is at. Like I just want to find, like, who do I want to partner with to develop a connected course who's in my topic, right? And I think that's what Joyce is saying. Like we have to be working with people. Like the next phase is, finding people who are digital ethnographers or digital media and learning scholars, people in my area that I can learn from. And again, it's like, how do I extend the experience of what I learned from working with somebody else in an open and connected way?
Right.
And that's exciting to me. So it's like, oh, maybe Kim and I could do something around literacy, or Howard and I could do something on social, or Mike and I could do something on digital ethnography. That's super cool, because as I know it's going to help me learn. And not only is it just for my learning, but I'm going to be able to do something that's really fun and important. It's the purpose piece. So I think for my personal professional development, that feels like it would be a huge win if that's an outcome of this community for me.
Yeah,
We just have
sometimes.
another, I just want to flag that we're having some participants jump in, and you should feel welcome to introduce yourselves.
Take off your crown.
Yeah. Kelly.
Update the score. It's still 13-9 apparently.
Yeah.
I think. Oh shoot.
Yeah.
I was just rude. Jeez.
Oh, jeez.
There's an interesting. I think sometimes when people talk about like the co-teaching, it's the idea that you're going to split one class. And some of the greatest experiences I had when I was at University of Mary Washington is we taught DS-106 in parallel. So I had a section, Jim had a section, or Martha had a section, and we cooperated on developing the materials and stuff that we would use. But in our own classes, we might do something subtly different. But it was sort of great to have someone to constantly bounce off the ideas of, or 1 week, one person could take the lead on getting the materials up. So it's not always taking a course and splitting it by having teachers take different parts of it. You can have people teaching the same content, but with their sort of own lens and their own group of people, and then you end up having like a bigger meta class between 2 sections or 3 sections. It's a different flavor of how you co-teach.
Yeah, that's what the grad students, the Danielle and Jeremy, who were on the webinar with us on Monday, that's what they're trying out is, and not necessarily a huge, I mean, it'll have an online component as a way to connect, but really it's about walking across the hall, 2 different literature courses that may have some themes in common, like something as broad as adaptation, and then picking up that theme across different courses and having their students meet once a week to do makes, which I just think is brilliant. And it's really back to what Jonathan said a while ago, and what I think too, which is some of these are just such small moves that you can make that change, and it's literally walking across the hall or across the street. I mean, that's just as connected.
Yeah, that and going back to the PD approach with the technology, where it ends up being about the technology, is I just always, if there's any way, I mean, you have to hit people where their passions are, and that's in their discipline. So if you come in talking about tools, that's a discipline of the techies, the nuts like me. But how do you get people tapped into what they're really interested in, which are the subjects that they devote their academic careers to? And so that's where I think I'd like to try to start things when working with faculty.
Yeah, I'd just jump in there, Alan. I was thinking about that when we teach technology as an ends, it's a real drag. Just focusing on the platform rather than the process, as Kim said earlier on. Somebody asked me the other day to describe why I thought my photography class was different, and I said it before I realized I knew it. And I said there are 1 million photography courses out there on YouTube, each one of which will teach you what technology does, the lenses, the cameras and stuff. But I think FONAR is about what technology means. And the other thing is that the course doesn't teach photography as an end. We never sit there fawning over prints, or we don't spend that much time handling photographs. We teach it as a means to do something. So how can photography change the world? How can you use visual literacy to not only sort of read but to write with images? And as you say, Alan, once you get the thing that people are most motivated by, photography is the hook. But FONAR's not a photography course. It's a visual literacy course and a digital fluency course. But everybody's into photography. It's a great hook to suck them in, and then apparently teach them how to play the cello or whatever it is that you fancy doing.
And the thing you said the other day about you approach things by you're trying to teach a complicated concept that you chip away with simple ideas and activities to get at that concept. That's just so beautiful.
Yeah, that's really worked for me. You take a really complex idea, like, so what is a 21st century photographer when everyone's a photographer? Everyone carries an image-making device. And that's too much for a 17, 18-year-old. It's too much for me to deal with. And so you set that as the big complicated problem at the front, and then chip away at it with simplicity. So don't worry about that problem now. We're going to chip away with some really simple stuff. Let's do this task. And at the end of it, you give people a toolkit, either a thematic toolkit or a practical toolkit, to go away and make something. So, to really apply that learning. Yeah, think all that stuff's really fun, and it gets even more fun when you start to open it out into a network to learn live and to actually see your things, see the things you do make a difference, and see other people see the things you do make a difference, and then them join them as well. It's easy for me to go off and start ranting about this.
I think I love the idea of just stuff that you can do immediately that's experiential and that is chipping away at the bigger problem. And I think that's what's great about, you know, Kevin's Daily Connects and, you know, some of the Phone Our Nation activities that, you know, you do it and then you experience it. And you're not putting huge barriers in the way of people getting to the experience really quickly, because you can describe it forever. And the doing of it is the only thing that's going to convince people.
And that was really clear when Alec Kurz did his session on NetMOOC, and those people who were participants talked about the LipDub project that was the first thing out of the gate. So they had a connective experience instead of this is what connective experience is all about.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's an unpredictability to it, which is also interesting. Like, you know, when you put your photos on Flickr, you don't really know what's happening. Like, oh, Jonathan, you would be interested in this. Jonathan's been mentoring my daughter on some of this stuff. And, you know, she just had one of her photos be used in somebody's Kickstarter video. And, you know, he posted a comment and she was like, wait, he didn't credit me. And there was this whole conversation they started to have about it. But it's like this is an experience, right? It's not always the best experience. I mean, it's complicated, but it's an experience of what it means to, you know, put something on the internet and have it circulate. And there's nothing, you just have to try it. So I think that, I mean, that was my Connected Courses experience too. It's like, okay, I have no idea what I'm getting into, but stuff is happening and people are out there. That's crazy.
Yeah, that process of negotiation, I mean, literally, I suppose, in the case of your daughter's pictures, but that process of negotiation is super, super valuable, isn't it? Mediation, perhaps, is a better word.
And I think it's probably the thing that scares lots of faculty away, and right, is that there's a real vulnerability to put your things out there for the world to critique, and I don't put all the student stuff out there for the world to critique. You know, there are things that go up and things that are shared in a smaller team. And there has to be some choice around that too, right? Like some other options, because and at different points in your career too. I've been talking to colleagues about what it means to be non-tenured, or what it means, right? All those academic first world problems that are also have real impact. What if you're doing something super experimental? And often we know it doesn't work, but then you're open for critique. And so, you know, those would be good conversations to have as a team at some point too. You know, how did you get yourself? How do you explain to people what you're up to? You know, do you need an about on all your sites? I'm not worried. Let's be clear. I'm rogue enough. Like, I actually don't care what people think. Like, it's okay. But I have colleagues that are very nervous about that. So, and I want to honor that.
I'm terrified, Kim. When I had to speak in front of you, like, I rewrote it at 4 a.m. I've been worried about that for months beforehand. And when I put stuff out online, I'm terrified, and when people criticize me, it's really hard to deal with. You know, I wrote a few pieces for a newspaper over here, and what people said was vitriolic. You know, and it took me a long time to get over that. But people also, like Alan in particular, actually come along and read it and say, and that's that support network, which becomes 100 times more valuable. and you get stronger, and you go again, and your work gets better. My writing's awful.
Well, Jonathan,
But
I think
it is better than it was.
Jonathan, I think you're also, I mean, that's actually interesting because I think you're at I think there's a scale issue. Like, you are so public. I mean, the work is so big. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm probably feeling pretty comfortable is there's probably 5 people looking at it, you know? And I think when you're I mean, there's something to be said for when you get to the scale that you are. And it would be I would love to hear more of that from you. And I love that about you, actually, that you're like, I don't know. Your talk was one of the best talks we heard this summer, for the record. They were all so good. That I think that'd be good to hear from those of you who get more. You have, in the scale, you have more people looking at your things, and so yes, I'll bet you don't always get, this is awesome, and so that's, I mean, and I'll bet Jim Groom and Alan can speak to, because DS-106 is so big that maybe you guys can, make us feel okay as we head into, bigger crowds.
There's a proud tradition of failing in public. The problem is not failing. The problem is failing to recover in public. And so, it's, you make mistakes, and then you say, boy, I really screwed up, or, and then this is how I'm addressing it. And that's the thing, the salvation is, it's not, yeah, so you're going to make the mistake, and something's going to go south, and, people will chew you to bits in a comment thread, and it's horrible. It's vicious. And then one person, may come along and save you with, I totally agree, I get you. And so the more I get yous that people get, the stronger they can get. It's tough, because I feel like I paint it as being too rosy. It can be really brutal, and the last thing that we want people to do is get hurt out there.
No, I got some good advice. When in 2011, when I first started was speaking publicly about it was actually about photography. I'd started using Creative Commons licenses for all of my work, and the response from photographers was enthusiastic. Well, no, it was actually the opposite. It was vitriolic, and I found that really difficult. But somebody said to me, you can deal with it 2 ways. One way is to completely ignore it. That's fine. And the other way is to be incredibly nice to the person. There are no other options. And that was great advice, and I live by that now. And if you're really nice to them and then they're still horrible, then you just ignore them. But the worst thing you should do is shine the moment that spotlight is on you, is to shine it on them. But it helped me to get over it. And funnily enough, somebody was sort of quite public and sort of said that I was talking nonsense, and that giving your pictures away for free was completely ridiculous. This is back in the day when we talked about free rather than talked about open, and now I try to talk about connected, but this is it was free then, apparently. Now that person, in fact, turned around to become my greatest advocate, and it was hugely, he played a huge part in that when we got the really big numbers to the Phonar class. Because he was a writer for Wired, and that had a huge impact.
Well, I see we're getting near the top of the hour, and I think this is a great theme to end on. I love this idea that it's not, we're going to have problems, we're going to fail in public, but what do we do when that happens? And our response to that is really the testing ground. We have to be open. We have to expect that there's going to be hiccups, and we also have to expect that we can recover. And there's folks like Alan and Jonathan who have been through this cycle before. And if you can maintain the positive values that I think we're all going into this, then there will be a way out the other end. So that's the leap of faith part, I guess. But I don't know, it's exciting. I feel like things are just starting. I love that there's already a ton of ideas for new courses that are really just getting off the ground. So as I said, and I think when we were putting this discussion together, but also there's tons of places to join the conversation on Twitter, the forum, the G+ community, the blogosphere, that we'll do our best at the DML Hub to kind of keep threading and syndicating and inviting people to conversations, but I hope that everybody will feel that they can jump in whenever they're ready and at whatever level they're ready to share stuff. And I wanted to particularly encourage folks, if you are developing courses, if you're looking for collaborators in your discipline to be part of a co-teaching or just sharing of ideas, we're trying to gather a catalog of connected courses that people are thinking of or will launch in the future, because I think a big issue is the visibility. So in a single institution, there's obviously there's only going to be a couple of faculty who are teaching a particular course, but that's hopefully the meta part of connected courses that might be helpful to people, is that this is a meta course about community. It's a meta community of people who are considering connected courses in a lot of disciplines. So you'll be able to find invitations, many invitations, to let us know and catalog your connected courses so that you'll be visible to others who are teaching in your area. And I just want to invite everybody else on the Hangout if you have any last words before we end our chat.
I'll jump in. Just to say that if anybody is really trying this stuff and they are struggling, then I would stand by anyone that was going through those sort of difficult moments, with that same sort of driving ambition to open things up, to connect, to change what they're doing. So that reach out is a genuine offer.
And that's a real thing, because there's, and you hear it, that there's sort of like this, some sort of tier status in all this, and it's like none of us got here without the help of other people, helping us up that ramp, if there is a ramp, and so extend to other people going along that same path. It kind of works.
I just want to thank everybody, and also I really do hope we keep sharing examples. So, thanks.